When 72-year-old Catherine asked for one honest photograph, the photographer had no idea she was about to capture a moment that would change both their lives forever. Lisa had been taking photos for people for almost 10 years now. She started when she was just 22, fresh out of college with a camera her grandmother gave her and big dreams of becoming famous. Those dreams had changed over the years, but her love for capturing real moments hadn't. Most days, she took pictures of families, couples getting married, or small businesses needing photos for their websites. The work paid the bills, but it wasn't exciting anymore. She felt like she was just going through the same motions over and over again. Smile here, look there, hold that pose. Everything felt fake and rehearsed. That's why when Mrs. Catherine called her, Lisa was intrigued. The old woman's voice was different from her usual clients. There was something mysterious about the way she spoke, like she had secrets to tell but wasn't quite ready to share them yet. Catherine lived in one of those big old houses that made Lisa think of ghost stories and mystery novels. It sat on a hill overlooking the town, surrounded by tall trees that had been growing there for probably 100 years. The house itself looked like it belonged in a different time, with its tall windows, fancy wooden details, and a garden that seemed to go on forever. When Lisa first drove up the long driveway, she felt nervous. She wasn't used to working with clients who lived in places like this. Most of her customers were regular families or young couples who met her at the local park or rented a small studio for an hour. Catherine answered the door herself, which surprised Lisa. She had expected a housekeeper or someone else to let her in. The woman was probably in her 70s with silver hair pulled back in a neat style and clothes that looked expensive but not flashy. Her eyes were the most striking thing about her. They were bright blue and seemed to see everything. "You must be Lisa," Catherine said with a warm smile. "Please come in. I've been looking forward to this." The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. Every wall had paintings or photographs hanging on it. Some looked old and valuable, while others were clearly done by local artists. Lisa recognized a few pieces from galleries she had visited downtown. This woman obviously knew art and had spent years collecting it. "I see you're admiring my collection," Catherine said, noticing Lisa looking around. "I've been collecting art for most of my adult life. My late husband used to joke that I loved paintings more than I loved him." She laughed softly, but Lisa could hear a touch of sadness in it. As they walked through the house, Catherine explained what she wanted. "I know this might sound strange, but I want photos that show who I really am. Not just the polite old lady that everyone sees when they look at me now." Lisa nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what Catherine meant. She had photographed older people before, and they usually wanted pictures that made them look younger or hid the signs of aging. But something in Catherine's tone suggested she wanted something different. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, where Catherine had set up a space she called her art studio. It wasn't like any studio Lisa had ever seen. Instead of being stark and empty, it was filled with easels, half-finished paintings, and shelves lined with art supplies. Large windows let in plenty of natural light, and the whole room felt alive with creativity. "This is where I come when I want to feel like myself," Catherine explained. "When my husband was alive, we used to paint together in here. After he died 3 years ago, I kept coming here. It's the only place where I don't feel invisible." That word stuck with Lisa, invisible. She had never thought about what it might feel like to get older and feel like people stopped seeing you as a real person. But as Catherine talked, Lisa began to understand what she meant. "People are very polite to me," Catherine continued, walking over to look out one of the big windows. "They hold doors, they smile, they ask about my health, but nobody really sees me anymore. They see an old woman who needs to be treated carefully. They don't see that I still have thoughts and feelings and dreams that matter." Lisa started setting up her camera equipment while Catherine talked. She had brought several different lenses and 2 lighting setups, not knowing exactly what kind of photos they would be taking. The natural light in the room was beautiful, but she wanted to be prepared for anything. As she worked, Catherine told her about her life. She had been married for 45 years to a man who encouraged her artistic side. They had traveled the world together, visiting museums and galleries, buying pieces from artists they believed in. They never had children, which people often told her she would regret, but she said she never did. "We were complete as we were," Catherine said. "We had each other, we had art, we had a good life. When he got sick, I took care of him for 2 years. After he died, everyone expected me to fall apart or become one of those lonely widows who sits at home feeling sorry for herself. But Catherine hadn't done that. Instead, she had thrown herself even more deeply into her art collection and had started painting again herself. She had also begun thinking about her own legacy and how she wanted to be remembered. "That's why I called you," she said, turning away from the window to face Lisa. "I want photographs that will remind people that I was a real person with a real life. Not just someone's wife or someone's elderly neighbor, but me, Catherine, the woman who loved art and beauty and wasn't afraid to live fully." Lisa finished setting up her equipment and took a few test shots to check the lighting. The room photographed beautifully, with soft light coming through the windows and interesting shadows created by all the art supplies and easels. But as she looked at Catherine through the camera lens, Lisa realized this wasn't going to be like her usual portrait sessions. There was something in the older woman's eyes that suggested she had very specific ideas about how she wanted to be photographed. And Lisa had a feeling that those ideas might challenge everything she thought she knew about portrait photography. "Before we begin," Catherine said, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "I need you to promise me something. I need you to photograph me honestly. Not the way you think people want to see me, but the way I actually am. Can you do that?" Lisa nodded, though she still wasn't entirely sure what Catherine meant. But she was about to find out, and something told her this photo session would be unlike anything she had ever done before. The afternoon sun was getting lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the studio floor. Catherine walked over to a small mirror on the wall and looked at her reflection for a long moment. Then she turned back to Lisa with a determined expression. "Are you ready?" she asked. Lisa raised her camera and nodded, but she had no idea what she was actually getting ready for. Lisa started taking the first few photos, trying to get a feel for how Catherine looked through the camera. The older woman was naturally graceful, moving around the art studio like she belonged there completely. Every pose seemed effortless, like she wasn't even trying to look good for the camera. But something felt off to Lisa. The photos were nice enough, but they looked like every other portrait she had taken of older clients. Catherine was sitting properly, smiling politely, wearing her neat cardigan and blouse. She looked like exactly what she said she didn't want to look like. Just another elderly lady being photographed for her family album. After about 20 minutes, Lisa realized she needed a different lens to capture the beautiful light coming through the windows better. The one she had been using wasn't wide enough to show the whole room and all the amazing artwork that surrounded Catherine. "I need to grab something from my car," Lisa said, lowering her camera. "I'll be right back." Catherine nodded and walked over to look at one of her husband's old paintings while Lisa headed downstairs. The afternoon light was getting even more beautiful, with golden rays streaming through all those tall windows. Lisa knew that if she could get the right lens, she could create something really special. She jogged out to her car, which was parked in the circular driveway in front of the house. Her equipment bag was in the trunk, and she quickly found the lens she needed. It was one of her favorites, perfect for capturing both a person and their environment in the same shot. As she walked back toward the house, Lisa felt excited about the possibilities. Maybe she could position Catherine near the windows with some of her artwork visible behind her. Or perhaps she could capture her actually painting, showing her in her element instead of just sitting for formal portraits. Lisa bounded up the stairs 2 at a time, eager to try out her new ideas. The studio door was still open from when she had left, and she could see the golden light still streaming across the wooden floor. Without thinking about it, she walked straight back into the room. That's when everything changed. Catherine was standing in the center of the studio, but she wasn't wearing the same clothes anymore. Her cardigan was folded neatly on a chair nearby, and her blouse was lying beside it. She was wearing only a simple white slip that fell to just below her knees. The afternoon light was hitting her from the side, creating soft shadows that made her look like she was part of one of the classical paintings that hung throughout her house. Lisa stopped dead in the doorway, her mouth falling open slightly. She felt her face turn red and immediately started to back out of the room. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," she began, fumbling with the door handle. "I should have knocked, I didn't mean to." But Catherine didn't seem embarrassed at all. She didn't rush to cover herself or ask Lisa to leave. Instead, she turned slowly toward the door, her expression calm and somehow expectant. There was no shame in her eyes, no panic or anger. She looked dignified and completely in control of the situation. "Please don't go," Catherine said quietly. Her voice was steady and sure. "I've been waiting for you to come back." Lisa stood frozen in the doorway, not sure what to do. Part of her wanted to close the door and give Catherine privacy to get dressed again, but something in the older woman's tone made her pause. This wasn't an accident or a mistake. Catherine had planned this. "I know this must seem strange," Catherine continued, not moving to cover herself. "But this is what I meant when I said I wanted you to photograph the real me." Lisa's mind was racing. She had never been in a situation like this before. All of her portrait clients had been fully dressed, usually in their nicest clothes. She wasn't sure what was happening or how she should respond. "I don't understand," Lisa said, still standing in the doorway with her new lens clutched in her hands. Catherine smiled gently. "When I look in the mirror, this is how I see myself. Not as the proper old lady in her cardigan and pearls. I see myself as I really am. A woman who has lived and loved and experienced life fully. A human being with a story worth telling." She gestured toward the paintings that covered the walls around them. "Look at all this art I've collected over the years. So many of these pieces show people as they truly are, not hidden behind fancy clothes and social expectations. The greatest artists in history have always understood that real beauty comes from honesty, not from pretending to be something you're not." Lisa slowly stepped back into the room, though she kept her distance. She was beginning to understand what Catherine meant, but she still felt overwhelmed by the situation. "I've spent my whole adult life being photographed as someone else," Catherine explained. "As Robert's wife at charity events, as the well-dressed hostess at dinner parties, as the respectable widow at church functions. But I've never had a photograph that shows just me, Catherine, the woman I am when nobody else is watching." The light in the room was getting even more beautiful as the sun continued to move across the sky. It cast a warm glow across Catherine's silver hair and created interesting patterns on the wooden floor around her feet. Lisa couldn't help but notice how the scene looked almost like a Renaissance painting come to life. "I'm not asking for anything inappropriate," Catherine said, seeming to read Lisa's thoughts. "I'm asking for art, I'm asking for truth. I want one photograph that captures me as a complete person, not just as the role everyone expects me to play." Lisa looked around the room at all the artwork Catherine had collected. There were paintings of people in various states of dress and undress, all done tastefully and with obvious respect for the subjects. She began to understand that Catherine saw this as an artistic statement, not anything improper. "I had a health scare last month," Catherine continued, her voice becoming softer. "Nothing serious, but it made me think about how I want to be remembered. I realized that there isn't a single photograph of me anywhere that shows who I really am inside." She paused and looked directly at Lisa. "I trust you. From the moment I saw your work, I knew you were the kind of photographer who could understand what I'm asking for. I'm not trying to shock anyone or create something scandalous. I just want one honest portrait of myself before it's too late." Lisa stood there with her camera hanging around her neck and the new lens still in her hands. She had never faced a decision like this in her career. But as she looked at Catherine standing there with such dignity and purpose, she began to realize that this could be the most meaningful photograph she had ever taken. The question was, did she have the courage to take it? Lisa took a deep breath and stepped fully into the room, closing the door gently behind her. Her heart was still beating fast, but something about Catherine's calm confidence was helping her feel less panicked about the situation. "Okay," Lisa said, setting her new lens down on a nearby table. "I think I'm starting to understand what you mean, but I need you to help me understand completely." Catherine smiled, and for the first time since Lisa had arrived, she looked truly relaxed. "Thank you for not running away. I was afraid you might think I was just a crazy old woman." "I don't think that," Lisa replied honestly, "but this is definitely not what I expected when you called me." Catherine walked over to a comfortable chair near the window and sat down, adjusting her slip modestly. The afternoon light was still streaming in, but it was softer now, creating a warm glow around her. She looked thoughtful for a moment before she began to speak. "Let me tell you about my life," Catherine said. "I got married when I was 23 to a wonderful man named Robert. For 45 years, I was known as Robert's wife. Don't get me wrong. I loved being married to him and I was proud to be his partner. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being Catherine and became just half of a couple." Lisa found herself genuinely interested in Catherine's story. She had met many older clients over the years, but none of them had ever opened up to her like this. At social events, people would introduce me as Robert's wife or Mrs. Thompson. Even after Robert retired and we started spending more time on our art collection, I was usually described as the woman who helped him choose pieces or who organized the charity events. It was like I didn't exist as my own person. Catherine gestured toward the paintings on the walls around them. Do you see that portrait over there? The one of the woman reading by the window? Lisa looked where Catherine was pointing and saw a beautiful oil painting of a middle-aged woman absorbed in a book, natural light falling across her face. That's from the 1800s. The artist painted his wife, but he didn't paint her in her fancy dress for church or in her apron doing housework. He painted her doing something she loved in her private moment, being herself. When I look at that painting, I see a real person, not just someone playing a role. Lisa was beginning to understand. And you want that kind of portrait of yourself? Exactly, Catherine said, her eyes lighting up. I want a photograph that shows Catherine, not Mrs. Thompson, not the widow, not the polite old lady. Just me as I really am. Lisa looked around the room again with fresh eyes. All the artwork Catherine had collected over the years told stories of real people in real moments. There were paintings of artists at work, mothers with their children, couples embracing, people lost in thought. None of them looked posed or artificial. When Robert got sick, Catherine continued, I spent 2 years taking care of him. People were very kind, but they only saw me as the devoted wife doing her duty. They didn't see that I was terrified, that I was grieving even while he was still alive, that I was strong enough to handle things I never thought I could handle. Catherine's voice became stronger as she talked. After he died, everyone expected me to become one of those sad widows who disappears from life. But I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to keep living, keep creating, keep being myself. The problem was I realized I wasn't sure who myself was anymore. Lisa felt a wave of sympathy for Catherine. She had never thought about what it would be like to spend so many years being defined by your relationship to other people, that you lost track of your own identity. That's when I started painting again, Catherine said, gesturing toward an easel in the corner that held a half-finished landscape. I hadn't painted since college, but something about being alone in this room made me want to try again. And when I paint, I feel like myself, not like someone's wife or someone's widow, just like Catherine. The room was quiet for a moment except for the sound of birds chirping outside the tall windows. Lisa was processing everything Catherine had told her, trying to understand the request from an artistic perspective, rather than just being shocked by it. So when you called me, Lisa said slowly, you weren't just looking for regular portraits. No, Catherine confirmed. I was looking for someone who could capture something real. I've seen your work, Lisa. You have a gift for making people look natural and authentic in your photographs. Most photographers just want their subjects to smile and look pretty, but your portraits show personality and emotion. Lisa felt touched by the compliment, but she was still uncertain about the situation. I understand what you're asking for, but I've never done anything like this before. I usually photograph families and couples, not 72-year-old women who want to be seen as real people. Catherine finished with a gentle smile. I guess that's what I mean, Lisa admitted. Catherine stood up and walked over to another painting, this one showing an elderly man working in his garden, dirt under his fingernails and sweat on his forehead. This artist didn't paint this man in his Sunday best. He painted him doing what he loved, looking exactly like himself. That's all I want. She turned back to Lisa. I'm not asking you to do anything inappropriate or uncomfortable. I'm asking you to photograph me with the same respect and artistry that you would bring to any other portrait session. The only difference is that I want to be seen as I am, not hidden behind the costume that society expects me to wear. Lisa looked at Catherine standing there in the golden afternoon light. Despite her age, there was something timeless and beautiful about her. She carried herself with dignity and purpose, and her eyes were full of life and determination. I've lived for 72 years, Catherine said. I've experienced joy and sorrow, love and loss, fear and courage. I've raised money for artists, I've traveled the world, I've created art with my own hands. I've been a friend, a lover, a caregiver, and a survivor. But there's not a single photograph anywhere that shows all of that. They all just show the polite version of me. Lisa realized that Catherine was right. Every photograph she had ever seen of older people showed them dressed up and smiling politely for the camera. None of them looked like real people with real lives and real stories. If you're not comfortable with this, I understand, Catherine said gently. I can get dressed again and we can take normal portraits. But I was hoping you might be brave enough to help me create something meaningful. Lisa picked up her camera, and looked at Catherine through the viewfinder. Even from across the room, she could see something in the older woman's expression that she had never captured in any of her other portraits. Complete honesty. "Okay," Lisa said finally. "Let's create something meaningful." Lisa raised her camera slowly, her hands trembling slightly. This was unlike anything she had ever done before, but something about Catherine's story had touched her deeply. She understood now that this wasn't about taking shocking photos. It was about capturing the truth of who someone really was. "Just be yourself," Lisa said softly, the same words she said to all her clients. But this time they meant something completely different. Catherine moved naturally around the room, and Lisa was amazed at how comfortable she seemed. There was no awkwardness or self-consciousness in her movements. She walked over to the window where the golden afternoon light was streaming in and stood there for a moment, looking out at the garden below. Through her camera lens, Lisa saw something beautiful. Catherine wasn't posing or trying to look a certain way. She was just being present in the moment, lost in her own thoughts. The light caught the silver in her hair and created soft shadows on her face that told the story of a life fully lived. "Tell me about that garden," Lisa said, taking her first photo. She had learned over the years that getting people to talk helped them relax and look more natural. "Robert and I planted most of those trees together," Catherine replied, her voice warm with memory. "The big oak in the center, we planted that the year we got married. It was just a tiny sapling then. Now look at it." Click. Lisa captured Catherine's expression as she talked about the tree. Her face showed love, loss, and pride all at the same time. It was the kind of expression that told a whole story without needing any words. "He used to joke that the tree would outlive both of us," Catherine continued with a gentle laugh. "He was right about that." Lisa moved around the room quietly, taking photos from different angles. She was starting to see Catherine not as an elderly woman in her underwear, but as a person with depth and history. Every line on her face told a story. Every gesture revealed something about her personality.
"Can you sit in your favorite chair?"
Lisa asked. Catherine walked over to a comfortable reading chair near the bookshelves. As she settled into it, Lisa could see this was where she spent a lot of time. There was a small table beside it with reading glasses, a coffee cup, and a half-finished crossword puzzle. "This is where I have my morning coffee," Catherine said, adjusting herself comfortably. "I sit here and watch the sunrise come through those windows. It's my favorite time of day because the house is quiet and I can just think." Lisa took several photos of Catherine in the chair. The natural light was perfect and Catherine looked completely at ease. She wasn't trying to smile for the camera or hold any particular pose. She was just sitting the way she normally would, and that made the photos feel authentic. "What do you think about during those morning moments?" Lisa asked, continuing to take pictures. "Everything," Catherine said with a smile. "I think about Robert and miss him. I think about the paintings I want to finish. Sometimes I plan what I want to do in the garden that day. Other times I just watch the birds and don't think about anything at all." As Catherine talked, Lisa realized she was learning more about this woman in one afternoon than she usually learned about clients she had known for years. There was something about the unusual situation that had broken down the normal barriers between photographer and subject.
"Can you show me one of your paintings?"
Lisa asked. Catherine's face lit up. She stood and walked over to the easel in the corner where a landscape painting was half finished. It showed the view from her garden, with soft brush strokes that captured the feeling of a peaceful morning. "I'm not very good yet," Catherine said, picking up a paintbrush and examining her work. "But I'm getting better. Robert always said I had an eye for color." Lisa took photos of Catherine looking at her painting, holding the brush, lost in thought about what she wanted to add next. These were some of the most natural shots of the whole session. Catherine was completely absorbed in something she loved, and it showed in every line of her body. "You are good," Lisa said honestly. "This painting feels peaceful, like being here in this room." Catherine beamed at the compliment. "That's exactly what I was trying to capture. This room has always been my sanctuary." As the afternoon continued, Lisa found herself relaxing completely. She stopped thinking about the unusual nature of the situation and focused entirely on what she did best, capturing real moments between real people. The only difference was that this time, her subject was being more honest than anyone had ever been in front of her camera. They talked about Catherine's travels with Robert, her favorite artists, the books she loved to read, and her dreams for the future. Catherine shared stories Lisa had never heard from any of her other clients. Stories about fear and courage, about making difficult decisions, about learning to be alone after 45 years of marriage. After Robert died, Catherine said at one point, I had to learn how to be just Catherine again. I had been part of a couple for so long that I wasn't sure who I was by myself. These past 3 years have been about rediscovering that. Lisa captured Catherine's thoughtful expression as she talked about this journey. The photo showed vulnerability and strength at the same time, the face of someone who had been through difficulty but hadn't given up. As the light began to change and the afternoon moved toward evening, Lisa realized they had been working for almost 3 hours. She had taken more photos than she usually did in an entire day, and every single one felt meaningful.
How do you feel?
Lisa asked, lowering her camera finally. Catherine stretched and smiled. I feel like myself, she said simply. For the first time in years, I feel like someone has actually seen me, not just the version of me that's polite and appropriate, but the real me. Lisa looked through some of the photos on her camera screen. Even on the small display, she could see that these were unlike any portraits she had ever taken. They showed a real person living a real life, not someone posing for the camera. These are beautiful, Lisa said, showing Catherine a few of the images. Catherine looked at the photos and tears began to form in her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness or embarrassment. They were tears of recognition. That's me, she whispered, touching the camera screen gently. That's actually me. Lisa understood in that moment that they had created something special together. These weren't just photographs. They were a record of a person's authentic self, captured with honesty and respect. As they began to pack up the equipment, both women knew that this session had changed them both. Catherine had found the courage to be truly seen, and Lisa had learned what it meant to photograph someone's soul instead of just their appearance. The golden afternoon light was fading, but something new had been created in that art-filled room, a collaboration between two women who had discovered the power of truth. 2 weeks after that unforgettable afternoon, Lisa sat in her small studio downtown, staring at her computer screen. She had spent countless hours working on Catherine's photographs, carefully editing each one to bring out the natural beauty and emotion she had captured that day. These weren't like any other photos in her portfolio. Usually, Lisa spent her editing time smoothing out wrinkles, brightening teeth, or adjusting lighting to make people look more polished. But with Catherine's photos, she found herself doing the opposite. She enhanced the lines that showed character, brought out the natural texture of her silver hair, and made sure every detail that told Catherine's story was clearly visible. Lisa had printed 20 of the best images on high-quality paper and mounted them in simple, elegant frames. As she arranged them on her desk, she felt nervous about Catherine's reaction. These photos were so different from anything either of them had ever done before. When Catherine arrived at the studio, she looked excited but anxious. She had dressed carefully in a navy blue dress and pearls, back to being the proper lady that everyone expected to see. But Lisa could tell that something had changed in her since their session. She carried herself differently, with more confidence and purpose. I have to admit I've been worried about how these turned out, Catherine said as she sat down across from Lisa's desk. Part of me wondered if I would regret what we did. Lisa turned the first photograph around so Catherine could see it. It showed Catherine sitting in her reading chair, natural light streaming across her face as she looked out the window toward her garden. Her expression was peaceful and thoughtful, and every line on her face seemed to tell a story of wisdom earned through experience. Catherine gasped softly when she saw it. She reached out to touch the frame gently as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Is that really me?" she whispered. "That's you," Lisa confirmed. "That's the real you." One by one, Lisa showed Catherine each photograph. There was Catherine standing by the window with the morning light in her hair. Catherine examining her painting with the concentration of a true artist. Catherine laughing as she told a story about her travels with Robert. Catherine sitting quietly, lost in memories that brought both joy and sadness to her face. With each image, Catherine's eyes filled with more tears. But Lisa could see these weren't tears of embarrassment or regret. They were tears of recognition and gratitude. "I never knew I looked like this," Catherine said, studying a photo that showed her hands as she held a paintbrush. Her hands were aged and marked with liver spots, but in the photograph they looked beautiful. The hands of someone who had created art, comforted others, and lived fully. "You look like yourself," Lisa said simply. "You look like a woman who has lived an amazing life and isn't finished yet." Catherine spent over an hour looking through all the photographs. She asked Lisa to tell her about taking each one, wanting to understand what had made her decide to capture each particular moment. Lisa found herself describing not just the technical aspects of the photography, but the emotions she had felt during their session. "When I took this one," Lisa said, pointing to a photo of Catherine painting, "you were completely absorbed in your work. You forgot I was even there. That's when I knew we were creating something special." When they finished going through all the photos, Catherine sat back in her chair and smiled. "I want to buy all of them," she said. Lisa was surprised. Most clients chose 3 or 4 favorites from a session. "Are you sure? That's a lot of photographs." "I'm sure," Catherine said firmly. "These aren't just pictures. They're proof that I exist as a real person. They're proof that Catherine still lives inside this old body that everyone treats so carefully." Catherine chose the largest print, the one of her, sitting in her reading chair, to be enlarged and specially framed. "This one is going in my living room," she announced. "Right where everyone can see it." Lisa was amazed by Catherine's confidence. "Won't people ask questions about it?" Catherine smiled mischievously. "I hope they do. When they ask who the woman in the photograph is, I'll tell them it's someone I know very well. Someone who taught me that it's never too late to be brave." Over the following months, Lisa and Catherine became genuine friends. Catherine would call her sometimes just to chat, and Lisa found herself looking forward to these conversations. Catherine had a way of seeing life that was both wise and refreshing. Catherine was true to her word about displaying the large photograph in her living room. When people visited, they always noticed it and asked about the mysterious, beautiful woman in the picture. Catherine would smile and give different answers each time, sometimes saying it was an old friend, sometimes claiming it was a piece from her art collection. Lisa noticed that Catherine seemed different after their photo session. She carried herself with more confidence and started taking more risks in her art. She began painting portraits of other people, something she had never tried before. She also started hosting small gallery events in her home, showing off her collection and supporting local artists. "That photo session changed me," Catherine told Lisa during one of their phone calls. "It reminded me that I don't have to apologize for taking up space in the world. I don't have to hide who I am to make other people comfortable." 6 months after their session, Catherine called Lisa with news that broke her heart. Catherine had been diagnosed with a serious illness. The doctor said she had maybe a year, possibly less. "I'm not scared," Catherine told Lisa. "I've lived a full life, and thanks to you I have proof of who I really was. That's more than most people get." Catherine spent her remaining months finishing several paintings and organizing her art collection. She worked with a lawyer to donate everything to the local art museum, with specific instructions about how she wanted her collection displayed. When Catherine passed away peacefully in her sleep 9 months later, Lisa was one of the first people notified. She cried for hours, not just for the loss of a friend, but for the loss of someone who had taught her so much about courage and authenticity. The museum honored Catherine's wishes exactly. Her entire collection was displayed in a special wing named after her and Robert. But the centerpiece of the exhibition wasn't one of the famous paintings she had collected. It was a series of 20 black and white photographs titled, "Catherine, Unguarded." The museum included a note that Catherine had written before she died. "These photographs represent my final artistic statement. They remind us that every person, regardless of age, deserves to be seen and remembered as a complete human being." Lisa attended the opening of the exhibition, standing quietly in the back as people moved through the rooms. She watched visitors stop in front of Catherine's photographs, studying them with curiosity and respect. Many people commented on the beauty and honesty they saw in the images. One elderly woman stood in front of the largest photograph for a long time. Finally, she turned to her daughter and said, "I want pictures like this taken of me. I want someone to see the real me too." Lisa smiled through her tears. Catherine's legacy wasn't just in the art she had collected or the money she had donated. It was in the courage she had shown to be authentically herself, and the inspiration she gave others to do the same. That night, Lisa went home and looked through her own portfolio with new eyes. She made a decision to approach every future client the way she had approached Catherine, not as someone to make look perfect, but as a real person with a real story worth telling. Catherine had taught her that the most beautiful photographs aren't the ones that hide the truth, but the ones that reveal it with honesty and respect.